What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors gets into a screaming match with a co-host of The View, leading to the most shocking exit in daytime television history? It only took 35 seconds for everything to explode. Before we get into this absolutely insane story, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that celebrities wish they could erase from existence. Hit that subscribe button now because you're not going to believe what went down last night. Last night's episode of The View was supposed to be an uplifting conversation about perseverance and hope. Michael J. Fox, the legendary actor known for his incredible career and his decades-long battle with Parkinson's disease, joined the panel for what everyone thought would be an inspiring discussion. The audience was packed, the energy was high, and the co-hosts were all smiles as they welcomed him to the table. Whoopi Goldberg started things off with warm words about his foundation and his tireless advocacy work, talking about how he's raised over $1 billion for Parkinson's research and helped fund groundbreaking treatments that have changed lives. Joy Behar cracked a few jokes that got the crowd laughing, making lighthearted comments about how good he looked and how he never seems to age. Even Sarah Haynes chimed in with heartfelt praise for everything he's accomplished despite his diagnosis, mentioning specific stories of patients who'd been helped by programs his foundation supports. The conversation was flowing naturally, touching on his acting career, his family, his books, and his optimistic outlook on life, despite the challenges he faces every single day. Michael was relaxed, smiling, telling funny stories about his kids, and sharing updates about promising research developments. The audience was eating it up, hanging on his every word. Everything seemed perfect, exactly the kind of feel-good segment that The View is known for. But then Sunny Hostin decided to take the conversation in a completely different direction, and that's when everything started to fall apart. Sunny leaned forward in her chair, her expression suddenly shifting to something much more serious, and said she wanted to address something that had been on her mind. The shift in her tone was so abrupt that the other co-hosts immediately picked up on it, exchanging quick glances with each other. She brought up a recent interview where Michael had discussed the importance of stem cell research and funding for Parkinson's treatments, specifically mentioning partnerships his foundation has with various pharmaceutical companies. The audience went quiet, sensing something was about to shift. Michael nodded along, clearly thinking this was going to be a straightforward discussion about science and advocacy, maybe even an opportunity to talk about the incredible progress being made in the field. But Sunny wasn't done setting up her point. She mentioned that she'd been reading about how some of the pharmaceutical companies that fund Parkinson's research have also been involved in price gouging, scandals, making life-saving medications unaffordable for the very people who need them most. She specifically named a company that had recently raised the price of a common Parkinson's medication by over 300%, putting it out of reach for thousands of patients who depend on it to function in their daily lives. The other co-hosts exchanged more glances, clearly not expecting this turn in what was supposed to be an uplifting conversation. Michael's smile faded slightly, but he maintained his composure, saying that while the pharmaceutical industry definitely has its problems, and he's been vocal about those problems for years, it doesn't diminish the importance of the research being done or the lives being saved through medical breakthroughs. He went on to explain that his foundation works with dozens of different organizations, some pharmaceutical companies, some academic institutions, some nonprofits, all with the goal of finding better treatments and eventually a cure. He said that you can't let perfect be the enemy of good, and that if he refused to work with anyone who wasn't completely ethically pure, he wouldn't be able to work with anyone at all. The system is broken, he acknowledged that, but progress still happens within that broken system, and patients can't afford to wait for the system to be fixed before research moves forward. Sunny pressed harder. She asked him directly if he thought it was hypocritical to accept donations and partner with companies that were simultaneously making it impossible for regular people to afford basic medications. Her tone was sharp, almost accusatory, and there was no mistaking that this wasn't just a casual question. Michael shifted in his seat, and you could see the temperature in the room starting to rise. He responded by saying that advocacy work requires partnerships, and while the system is far from perfect, progress doesn't happen by refusing to work with anyone who isn't completely pure. He repeated his earlier point, but with more emphasis this time, clearly starting to feel defensive about the line of questioning. He added that he's been fighting for affordable healthcare access his entire advocacy career, that he's testified before Congress multiple times about the need for price controls and transparency, and that suggesting he's okay with price gouging just because he accepts research funding is completely unfair. But Sunny wasn't backing down. She cut him off mid-sentence and said that sounded like a convenient excuse for someone who has the money and resources to afford any treatment he needs. While millions of Americans are literally choosing between medication and groceries, the audience gasped. You could hear the sharp intake of breath from multiple people at once. Whoopi tried to jump in and redirect the conversation, saying something about how complicated these issues are and how everyone's trying their best, but Sunny kept talking over her. She said that it's easy to praise the pharmaceutical industry when you're not the one being bankrupted by their greed, and that maybe he should use his platform to call out these companies instead of taking their money. She added that patients need advocates who are willing to bite the hand that feeds them, not ones who are comfortable with the system as long as they get their funding. Michael's face went red. His hands, which had been resting calmly on the table, suddenly clenched into fists. You could see his jaw tighten, his shoulders tense up. He looked directly at Sunny and said, in a voice that was shaking with barely controlled anger, that she had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. He told her that he spent over 3 decades raising money for research, fighting for patients' rights, lobbying politicians, organizing advocacy campaigns, and trying to make a difference in a system that was broken long before he got sick. He said that sitting in a comfortable chair on a talk show and throwing accusations at people who are actually doing the work is the easiest thing in the world. Anyone can criticize, he said, but actually getting in there and making change happen requires compromise, requires working with people you might not agree with on everything, requires being pragmatic instead of just ideologically pure. The tension was absolutely suffocating. You could feel it through the screen. Joy Behar tried to lighten the mood with a joke about how they should all take a breath and remember their friends here, but nobody laughed. The joke fell completely flat. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, her eyes darting between Michael and Sunny with increasing panic. Whoopi was frantically gesturing to the producers off-camera, clearly trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster before it went completely off the rails. But Sunny wasn't done, not even close. She fired back by saying that she wasn't attacking him personally. She was asking legitimate questions about accountability and ethics. She said that just because someone has a disease doesn't mean they're immune to criticism, and that his defensive reaction proved he knew there was truth in what she was saying. She added that maybe he'd gotten too comfortable being treated like a hero and forgotten what it's like for everyday people who can't afford to fight back against the system. She said that she respects what he's been through and what he's accomplished, but that doesn't mean his choices should be beyond scrutiny. If anything, she argued, someone with his platform has an even greater responsibility to use it ethically. Michael interrupted her, his voice getting louder. He said that she was twisting everything he'd said and everything he stood for. He told her that his foundation has helped thousands of patients access medications they couldn't afford, that they run assistance programs, that they lobby for policy changes, that they do everything possible to help people within the constraints of a broken system. He said that she was painting him as some kind of corporate puppet when the reality is that he's been fighting against corporate greed his entire advocacy career. He asked her what she'd done, what programs she'd started, how many patients she'd helped, how much money she'd raised for research. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sunny's eyes flashed. She said that this wasn't about her, this was about him and his choices. She told him that deflecting to her credentials was a classic defensive tactic when someone doesn't want to answer the actual question being asked. She said that she'd spent years as a federal prosecutor and then as a lawyer fighting for justice, that she'd worked on healthcare fraud cases, that she knew exactly how these pharmaceutical companies operate and how they use people like him as cover for their predatory practices. She said that whether he wants to admit it or not, his name and his story give legitimacy to companies that are actively harming people, and he has a responsibility to address that. That was the breaking point. Michael slammed his hand down on the table so hard that it made a loud bang that echoed through the studio. The audience let out a collective gasp. Several people jumped in their seats. He stood up from his chair, pointing his finger directly at Sunny, and said that she was completely out of line. His voice was raised now, no longer trying to maintain the polite composure expected on daytime television. He told her that she was sitting there in her designer clothes, getting paid millions to give her opinions on TV, and she had the audacity to lecture him about what real people are going through. He said that she had no idea what it's like to wake up every morning not knowing if you'll be able to button your own shirt, to watch your hands shake uncontrollably, to feel your body failing you piece by piece, and to channel all of that fear and frustration into trying to help other people avoid the same fate. Sunny stood up too, matching his energy. She said that at least she wasn't taking money from companies that were killing people with their pricing policies. She told him that if he really cared about patients, he'd be using every appearance, every interview, every platform he has to call out the corruption instead of playing nice with the people profiting from suffering. Her voice was getting louder with every word, and the other co-hosts were completely frozen, not knowing what to do. She said that he could talk all he wanted about what he's been through, and she sympathized with that, but going through something doesn't automatically make you right about how to fix it. She said that his personal experience was being weaponized by corporate interests, and he was letting it happen because it was easier than confronting the ugly truth about where his funding comes from. Michael shot back that she didn't know a damn thing about his advocacy work or what he's accomplished. The curse word hung in the air for a moment, shocking the audience. This was daytime television, and people don't typically swear on The View. He said that she was more interested in scoring points and creating controversy than actually understanding the complexities of medical research and healthcare policy. He told her that it's easy to be a critic, to sit on the sidelines and throw stones at everyone who's actually in the game, but it takes real courage to get in the arena and try to make change happen, even when the system is rigged against you. He added that he's fought harder for Parkinson's patients than she's fought for anything in her entire privileged life, and he was done listening to her sanctimonious bullshit. The insult hit hard. Sunny's expression changed from righteously angry to genuinely furious. Her face flushed. Her posture became even more rigid. She responded by saying that she didn't need to take lectures about privilege from someone who's been wealthy and famous for 40 years. She said that he was so disconnected from reality that he couldn't even see when he was being used as a PR tool by corporations that don't give a shit about anything except their profit margins. She told him that his foundation might do good work, but that doesn't erase the fact that he's giving cover to an industry that's destroying lives. She said that when patients see him partnering with these companies, they think those companies must be okay, they must be trustworthy, because Michael J. Fox wouldn't work with the bad guys. But that's exactly what he's doing, she argued, whether he realizes it or not. Michael's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet, which was somehow even more intense than when he'd been yelling. He said that he'd spent the last 30 years watching his body slowly betray him, watching his friends and fellow patients suffer and die, losing people to this disease, attending funerals, comforting families, and fighting every single day to try to make things better for the next generation of people who get diagnosed with Parkinson's. He said that he'd given speeches, raised hundreds of millions of dollars, testified before Congress, met with world leaders, dedicated his entire life to this cause. And now he was sitting here, being called a corporate shill by someone who decided to care about this issue approximately 5 minutes ago, because it made for good television. He said that she hadn't earned the right to question his commitment or his ethics. Sunny exploded. She said that she'd been a lawyer and an advocate long before she was on television, and that she'd fought for healthcare justice for communities that people like him never even think about. She told him that his anger proved he couldn't handle being challenged, that he expected everyone to just bow down and thank him for doing the bare minimum while the system continued to fail. She said that real advocacy means speaking truth to power, not partnering with power and pretending that makes you a hero. She said that patients in poor communities, patients of color, patients without his resources, they're the ones paying the price for his compromises. They're the ones who can't afford their medications because companies know they can charge whatever they want and still get positive PR by donating a fraction of their profits to foundations like his. Whoopi finally managed to get a word in, practically shouting over both of them to please calm down and remember they were on live television. She said that everyone here wants the same thing. Everyone wants to help patients. Everyone wants to fix the broken healthcare system, and that they should focus on their common ground instead of attacking each other. But it was too late. The confrontation had gone way past the point of recovery. Michael looked around at the other co-hosts, his chest heaving, his face still flushed with anger. He looked back at Sunny with absolute contempt in his eyes. He said that he'd made a mistake coming on this show. He said that he thought he was going to have a conversation with intelligent people about important issues, with people who actually understood the complexities of advocacy work and the realities of trying to create change in a corrupt system. But instead, he'd walked into an ambush by someone more interested in tearing people down than building anything up. He told Sunny that she should be ashamed of herself for using his disease as a prop in her quest for controversy. He added that she clearly didn't give a damn about Parkinson's patients or affordable health care. She just wanted her moment to play the righteous crusader on television, to be the one who took down the famous guy, to get her viral clip that everyone would be talking about. Sunny fired back immediately, saying that if he couldn't handle tough questions, he shouldn't be acting like he's the face of the movement. She said that patients deserved advocates who would fight the real fight, not someone who'd been captured by the system he claims to be fighting against. She told him that running away from criticism was exactly what she'd expect from someone who's been surrounded by yes men for so long that he forgot what accountability looks like. She said that if he wanted to be treated like he's above reproach, he should have stayed in Hollywood where everyone kisses his ass. Out here in the real world, people get asked hard questions about their choices. Michael's hands were shaking. Whether from anger or from his condition or both, it was impossible to tell. He ripped off his microphone with a sharp tug that made a loud pop through the audio system. He said, loud enough for everyone to hear, even without the mic, that he was done with this bullshit. He told Sunny that she could sit in her chair and criticize everyone who's actually trying to make a difference while she contributes nothing but negativity to the world. He said that he'd been dealing with aggressive journalists and skeptical politicians and corporate executives for 3 decades. He'd been questioned and criticized and attacked by people far smarter and far more knowledgeable than her. But he'd never met anyone as deliberately cruel and intellectually dishonest as her. The audience was in complete shock. Some people were shouting, yelling at Sunny to apologize, yelling at Michael to sit back down. Some were dead silent, their mouths hanging open. Some looked like they were about to cry, upset at seeing their hero being attacked like this. The other co-hosts were frantically trying to figure out what to do. Whoopi was calling for a commercial break, waving her arms at the control room. Joy was trying to stand up and physically get between them, but she wasn't sure if she should. Sarah had her head in her hands, looking like she wanted to disappear. But Sunny wasn't backing down an inch. She called out to him as he started to walk away from the table. She said that the truth hurts, doesn't it? She told him that he could storm off the set like a child having a tantrum, but that didn't change the fact that she was right. She said that his foundation took millions from pharmaceutical companies. Those same companies charged dying patients tens of thousands of dollars for medications, and he stood there defending them because it was convenient for his fundraising goals. She practically shouted that if he couldn't defend that without losing his temper, maybe he should think about why. Maybe he should ask himself why the truth makes him so angry. Michael stopped walking. For a moment, it looked like he might turn around and come back for round two. The entire studio held its breath. People were leaning forward in their seats, eyes wide, waiting to see what would happen next. But instead, he just shook his head in disgust. He said, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up, that this was exactly what's wrong with modern media. Everyone's more interested in creating drama than solving problems. Everyone wants to tear people down rather than build them up. Everyone's looking for their viral moment instead of actually trying to make the world better. He said that he dedicated his life to trying to help people, to trying to find a cure, to trying to make life better for millions of patients around the world. And this is what he gets for it. This is the thanks he gets. Being attacked on television by someone who knows nothing about what he does. Sonny responded by saying that if he wanted praise and worship, he should have stayed home and read his fan mail. She said that when you enter the public square and partner with controversial corporations, you don't get to hide behind your diagnosis when someone asks you to justify those decisions. She told him that she wasn't attacking him as a person, she was challenging his choices as an advocate, and if he couldn't tell the difference, that was his problem, not hers. She said that patients needed him to be better, to be braver, to be willing to lose funding if that's what it takes to do the right thing. That's what real advocacy looks like. Michael turned back one more time. His expression was a mixture of fury and something else, maybe disappointment or sadness or exhaustion. He said that she was the most self-righteous person he'd ever met, and that's saying something in Hollywood, where self-righteousness is practically a requirement. He told her that she sits in her ivory tower judging everyone while doing nothing to actually help. She talks a big game about what advocates should do, but she's never been in the trenches, never had to make the hard choices, never had to compromise to move the ball forward. He said that when she's raised even a fraction of the money he has for research, when she's helped even a fraction of the patients he has, when she's actually done the work instead of just running her mouth, then maybe she'll have earned the right to question him. Until then, she should shut the hell up and let the grown-ups do the work. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked straight off the set, leaving his chair pushed back, his papers scattered on the table, his water glass knocked over and spilling across the surface, and the entire view panel sitting in stunned silence. Sonny called after him one more time, saying that walking away doesn't make her wrong, it just makes him a coward. She said that she'd hit a nerve, that his reaction proved she was onto something, that he knew she was right and he couldn't handle it. But Michael didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge her at all. He pushed through the studio doors and disappeared into the backstage area, the doors swinging shut behind him with a loud bang. The camera stayed on the panel for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. Whoopi finally managed to stammer out something about going to commercial, her voice shaky and uncertain. Sonny was still standing, her arms crossed, looking defiant despite the absolute chaos she'd just created. She looked directly at the camera and said that someone needed to ask these questions, that accountability matters, that celebrity doesn't exempt you from criticism. Joy and Sarah looked absolutely shell-shocked, like they couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. The audience was a mess of different reactions. Some people were applauding Sonny for asking tough questions and refusing to let a celebrity off the hook. Others were booing her loudly for how she'd treated a beloved figure who's been through so much. Most were just sitting there trying to process what they'd just witnessed, their faces showing confusion and shock and discomfort. Michael J. Fox had walked off The View after one of the most brutal confrontations in daytime television history, and it all happened because Sunny Hostin refused to back down from her accusations about pharmaceutical company partnerships. What started as a conversation about hope and perseverance ended with screaming, accusations of corruption, personal attacks, profanity, and one of the most dramatic exits ever seen on the show. The episode that was supposed to inspire ended up exposing just how quickly things can fall apart when tough questions meet fierce defensiveness. When idealism meets pragmatism. When someone who's used to being treated like a hero gets challenged in a way they're not prepared for. Nobody involved walked away looking good. The studio was left in chaos, and viewers at home were left wondering what the hell they just watched.